Aloha, I am Susan Arnett. I am a criminal trial defense attorney in Hawaii, recently retired from the Public Defender's Office, and I teach at the William S. Richardson School of Law at the University of Hawaii, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you today.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Miller. I was a student and an alumni of the program myself, so I participated in 2010 in my senior year of high school. For the last 10 years, I have been a coordinator in the state of Nevada, helping to organize the competition, coaching teams, coaching teachers, helping them prepare for presentations. And this year I stepped down as a coordinator, so this is my first year getting the opportunity to judge at the national level, and I'm really excited to hear what you have for us today. So thanks for being here.
And as am I. I'm Andy Levy. I'm a trial lawyer in Baltimore, Maryland. I also, Maryland has two law schools, the University of Maryland and the University of Baltimore, and I alternate semesters teaching there as an adjunct prof.
So please introduce yourselves. You might tell us where in Colorado you're from, and also your teacher.
Hi, my name is Annalie Christopher, and I'm a junior, and I'm from Denver.
My name is Maximus Vogt. I'm a junior, also in Denver.
My name is Sonia Hay, and I'm a junior and also from Denver.
My name is Roxana Flores, and I'm a senior, and I'm also in Denver.
And my name is Riley Kelly, and I'm a junior and also from Denver. And our teachers are Mandy Hostetter and Matthew Fulford.
Thank you. I will read question 2, which I'm going to guess you are intimately familiar with, and then ask you to begin your presentation. Members of Congress are not only legislators, but they are also inquisitorial and should meet frequently to inspect the conduct of the public officers, according to a quote attributed to George Mason at the Philadelphia Convention. How effectively do you believe Congress has used its investigatory power? Explain the differences, if any, between Congress's power to investigate and the power of oversight. Which power, in your opinion, is more significant? And finally, how effectively do you believe Congress has used its oversight power? Please begin.
Congress's investigatory power aims to help conduct oversight, better inform the public, and write good legislation. While not expressly stated in the Constitution, it is implied, as Article 1, Section 1 grants Congress all legislative powers. The investigatory power was frequently used by the British Parliament and the colonies prior to the creation of the Constitution. In Federalist 51, Madison further demonstrates the founders' intent for the investigatory power as he states, "You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place oblige it to control itself." The Supreme Court's decision in Watkins v. United States in 1957 further solidified Congress's investigatory power, stating that the power is inherent in the legislative process and is broad as it encompasses inquiries concerning the administration of existing laws as well as proposed or possibly needed statutes.
Throughout history, Congress has used its investigatory power successfully in times of crisis to more effectively legislate. For example, one of the first congressional investigations was in 1792 over a Native American victory in the Northwest Territory that resulted in heavy U.S. casualties. It concluded that inadequate equipment and training contributed to the military disaster led by General Arthur St. Clair. Similarly, the Senate's investigation into the Teapot Dome scandal was largely effective as it informed the public of an unprecedented level of greed and corruption in the federal government. Following this, the Supreme Court bolstered Congress's power to conduct investigations, as McGrain v. Daughtry in 1927 held that congressional committees can issue subpoenas, compel witnesses to testify, and hold them in contempt if they fail to comply, as long as it relates to a true legislative purpose.
One of the most notable uses of the investigatory power was the formation of the Select Committee on Presidential Campaign Activities, which investigated possible corruption in the 1972 presidential election campaign following Watergate. It effectively revived public confidence in congressional investigations as it connected President Nixon and other White House officials to the cover-up of the burglary. Many of the recommendations of the report became law, including the Federal Election Campaign Act, the Ethics in Government Act, and the establishment of the Office of Government Ethics as an oversight agency. Additionally, following 9/11, Congress established a National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States, which issued a report that concluded the communication failures between the CIA and FBI allowed the attacks to occur, and in response, the Department of Homeland Security was created. Congress has effectively used its investigatory power to address national crises and strengthen and draft legislation.
In contrast, congressional oversight refers to the review, monitoring, and supervision of executive agencies, programs, and policies by the legislative branch. The investigation process is one tool that can be used for oversight. In addition, impeachment, confirmation, appropriations, authorization, and budget processes also make up oversight. Oversight only concerns Congress checking the executive branch, while congressional investigations can be used for any legislative purpose. Therefore, the investigatory power is more significant as it pertains to issues regarding society as a whole. And without being able to conduct investigations, effective oversight would be impossible to achieve.
Oversight is also an inherent power of Congress. However, the effectiveness of Congress's oversight power has been reduced by hyperpartisanship. For example, the Benghazi investigation and the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election both became political, and as a result, no conclusive result was reached over serious issues, leading to the American public losing trust in oversight. Additionally, the court's decision in Trump versus Mazars in 2020 held that while the president is not immune from congressional investigations, a higher standard must be applied to establish the legitimacy of congressional investigations and subpoenas. This strengthened the executive branch's ability to question the validity of congressional investigations, and as a result, prevents Congress from effectively using oversight as a check. We are now open for questions.
You gave some examples of investigations, which I assume you were characterizing as a effective and good use of that power, the 1792, Teapot Dome, Watergate, and 9/11. I'm wondering if you could give us some examples of what you think were not a good use of the investigatory power, and how do we make sure that the power is used for the good uses and not for the bad uses?
One of the most famous examples of an ineffective and even abusive congressional investigation was the House Un-American Activities Commission, which was established in 1938 to investigate alleged communist ties within entertainment industries, the federal government, and within the private lives of citizens. And this investigation was largely abusive as it ruined citizens' careers and reputations, blacklisted many, and invaded upon citizens' First Amendment rights.
The Army McCarthy hearings were another example of a bad investigation. They were a series of hearings held by the United States Senate Subcommittee on Investigations to investigate conflicting accusations between the United States Army and U.S. Senator Joseph McCarthy. Due to the new ability to live stream congressional investigations on television, Americans were able to see the cruelty and recklessness of Joseph McCarthy. And when Welch was subpoenaed, he said, "Have you no decency?" to U.S. Senator McCarthy, and it immediately ended the investigation. But overall, it was a bad investigation as it was invading on private citizens' free speech.
And lastly, another example would be during former President Trump's term when there was a zero tolerance policy. And in 2018, there were thousands of children separated from their parents across the southern border. And this brought up substantiated allegations of mistreatment. And as of today, there are still many children trying to look for their family members. And so to address the second part of your question, in order to better have better congressional investigations, we should have bipartisan commissions, and then that's when legislative must come out of it.
Just quickly to on the bipartisan commissions, made up of elected individuals or appointed individuals? Did you have a position on that?
I think it depends on the situation at hand that is being investigated, because sometimes it is important that an outside commission is established, especially if it involves, if there's the possibility of Congress members being involved in the acts that were committed. So in that case, it would be better to use a commission. However, in some cases, elected officials could be better.
So let me, in your opening, if I heard it correctly, and so maybe I didn't, seem to be equating the Benghazi investigation and the Russian interference investigations that were both politicized. But is it accurate to say that no conclusions were reached? It may be that the that they're for reasons of messaging and politics and other reasons that a significant part of the electorate were unwilling to accept the conclusions from the Russian investigation. But that's different from saying that no conclusion was reached, or that and more, I guess more importantly, my question is are you concluding that therefore there was no value in the investigation itself?
I would agree that results were reached as a result of the investigation. However, because they were portrayed in such a political manner and it could be argued politically motivated, it was very difficult for the majority of the American public to.
So what do you do about, I guess then my question is, this is a real problem then. What do you, this is a brave new world in terms of fake news and, you know, alternative facts, and what do you do about it?
Well, as my colleague has proposed before, through a bipartisan commission, we might be able to see less politically motivated investigations, because with the Benghazi investigation, one can make the argument that it became politically motivated and was targeting Hillary Clinton as she was involved and she was running for president. However, through these bipartisan commissions, we would be able to see less partisan motives for people on the board of the investigation.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But let me just, so it takes two to tango. To have a bipartisan commission, you need some cooperation, and they are, I mean, explain then, I mean, you can't even get agreement on a commission to investigate the January 6th insurrection. I mean, which seemed to be a no-brainer, but apparently is just one more political fight. So again, how are we going to get out of this box?
I think part of the issue is that people have become more drawn to party lines rather than serving the public. And I think it's going to be very difficult to get out of the situation that we are in right now. And we can see these control and ability to stick with party lines through President Trump's second impeachment, where many top Republicans agreed that President Trump had committed crimes regarding the January 6th insurrection, but yet did not vote to convict him. And this can be seen because they were trying to make sure that they won re-election and were still supported by the Republican Party.
As well, to answer the second part of your question about specifically the January 6th attack, we support Speaker Pelosi's proposal of a 9/11 style commission that would focus on uncovering the causes of the attack, and as my colleague says, in a bipartisan manner of elected officials. If this kind of investigation was successful, it would most likely result in preventative legislation, just as the 9/11 investigation created measures such as the Department of Homeland Security to prevent terrorism after the attack.
Additionally, I would like to add that with what my colleague has just stated, many Republicans in Congress have said that they won't go forward with this unless the Black Lives Matter protests over the summer are also investigated. So I think that if we are going to move past this partisan blockade, we are going to have to make compromises, because while some people might not want these protests to be investigated, it might be the only way to eventually reach a conclusion regarding the January 6th incitement at the Capitol.
So we only have a minute left, but so briefly, please answer this one for me. As the world's become increasingly complex, economic systems have become more complex, the stock market, the different types of securities that exist in the stock exchange, corporate affairs are now global trade and supply chains, and technology has become far more complicated. How is it that Congress is supposed to be expected to stay informed and make legislation in an informed way? Are these investigations that they've been doing recently an effective way of keeping them informed on making legislation?
Well, I would suggest that Congress, in order to keep that power, they can use the power of the purse designated by Article 1, Section 7, to cut off salaries of non-compliant heads of agencies and better control and oversee executive agencies through the budget.
Does anyone else have very briefly another answer?
If I may add on.
Yes, please.
Additionally, the role of the Inspector General of each administrative agency is assigned with performing oversight of that agency and then reporting to Congress. And by strengthening the role of these Inspector Generals and preventing them from being fired by the executive for no real cause, we can further strengthen oversight of executive agencies in this manner.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Here.
Thank you very, very much. You've given us a lot to think about. Your initial presentation was very interesting. We have heard references to Madison Federalist 51 before, but you put it in very understandable terms and then you applied it. And that was an effective way to present that information. I really responded to how you dealt with investigatory powers and then compared and contrasted that with oversight powers. I thought that was clearly done. And it sometimes can get fuzzy and a gray area between those two, but I thought you avoided that well. I liked that you didn't just stick with examples that we gave you or asked about. You had other examples to illustrate the points that you were making, the conclusions or opinions that you were offering us. It's just obvious that you put in the work to understand this issue. It's a complex issue. I got to tell you, most people and most of your parents' friends could not have the discussion you just had with these questions. They wouldn't know as much as you now know, and they wouldn't be able to articulate it as you did. So you, your teachers, certainly your parents, but deserve a lot of congratulations. Well done. Thank you.
Yes, so I definitely agree with that. I found any number of things in both your opening and then in the conversation of interest, of provocative, got me thinking. The description of the Army McCarthy hearings and the Welch's have you no decency. My parents, growing up, my parents always used to talk about that, and my questions about sort of what do we do about it were not just sort of rhetorical. It's a genuine question, because what does bipartisanship mean in an era when sort of one side of the debate has just sort of slid off the deck, and it's like, we need to have a bipartisan commission to decide whether, slavery should have been abolished. It's just they're not, you can't equate. At some point you have to say, wait a minute, this isn't a matter of equating these two sides, and I don't know what you do about it. So it's a genuine question on my part that you guys, this is going to be, this is your world, much more so than it is mine. It may have been my generation was responsible for making it, but it's going to be your generation's responsibility to sort of figure out what to do with the mess you've been handed. And it's, I think that I read a piece, just briefly, I'll finish up by saying I read a piece that said, when talking about the effect of the internet, and it said, 50 years after Gutenberg's press, it wasn't the world plus 50 years, plus the printing press. It was a whole new world that was that had evolved from that. And I think I think we are in a similar era now that we're going to have to think of new ways to address this. And it's going to be up to you folks. And having heard you now for a few minutes, I have a great deal of confidence and hope that you know, that you've got a good shot at doing it, and that makes me very happy.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation today with this team. You know, this is the last unit we've had of the day. So your team 12 we've seen today, and none of the other teams did we really get into so much of a deep discussion on the partisanship. You know, it was mentioned, it was talked about to some extent, but I really appreciated the courage you guys had in really tackling that head on, because it is a serious, significant problem in our system today. And the fact is no one has a really great solution for it. And everyone who's talking about how partisan politics are generally also is part of one of the parties, right? Or at least leans heavily towards one of them anyway. And it's very, very difficult to have these conversations and come up with anything that is really significant. Every time I have these conversations with most of my friends and colleagues, it ends up kind of being like, shrug your shoulder, what are we gonna do about it? Like this just sucks. You know what I mean? And I feel like we started to really get somewhere today, and we only had 8 minutes to do this. So I'm really impressed that we got at least somewhere with it. You know, the whole conversation has just sparked in my head and this may just be a rhetoric, it may not even have any significant concrete value here, but rather than talking about bipartisanship, you know, considering what Andrew just stated about how one side really is kind of off the deep end in many ways, what if we start talking about nonpartisanship? You know, we have a judicial branch that's supposed to be nonpartisan, at least at the federal level. As far as investigatory work goes, as far as not making legislation, not creating public policy, but fact-finding, statistical research, qualitative and quantitative analysis, and understanding the issues ahead of us, perhaps as a nation, we should be more concerned with building nonpartisan organizations with either outside of the government, quasi-governmental, or you know, within the branches of government that are fully insulated as much as we can, as close as we can to what the judiciary is, that really are there to just do fact-finding missions and don't have an agenda. And then, you know, the partisan politicians can use that information, but it's public information and it's out there. And I don't know what that looks like, you know, but this conversation today is, it sparked something for me, and it sparked some thoughts that I haven't had the rest of the day. And to be honest, I haven't ever really thought about before. And I've had conversations about this with people who have far more years of experience studying and reading about and learning these things than all of you. And I'm just thoroughly impressed with the level of courage you have in confronting these issues and the level of nuance that you are willing to, you know, really dive into, and the maturity in, I suspect strongly that all of you have your own political ideologies and leanings to some extent, but really strongly stating we need to be more bipartisan. It's not seen that often in the youth these days, and I'm really heartened to hear the comments you guys made today. So thank you so much.
Say one more thing. Roxana, all by herself, was carrying the flag for seniors, and the rest of you are juniors, which is really even more impressive for your whole team in your command of this issue. We are all exhausted, you perhaps even more than us, although we are pretty tired. And just to be really mean, I'll mention that I still get to go out and enjoy a beautiful day in Hawaii, because it's still mid-afternoon here. But good luck with the rest of the competition if you continue on, and very well done. Thank you so much.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Thank you, judges.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
judges.